Paul sat next to a homeless man on the bus. He sighed, clearly not wanting to be there. This was exactly why he had opted for a car as soon as he was old enough to try for his driver's license. But his car was in the shop, so he had no choice except to take public transportation. Paul wrinkled his nose at the funk radiating off of the homeless man. It was a mix of BO and liquor, a combination that was less than appealing, but still slightly more bearable than the odor of the bus itself. The homeless man leaned against the window, appearing to be asleep. How could anyone sleep on this thing? Thought Paul. He kept on reminding himself that home was only a few blocks away, and it would be only a few more hours before he had to take that stupid bus to meet his girlfriend downtown. She didn't have a car, so it usually went the way of him picking her up for their dates. But now that he was carless, it would be this way. Being the gentleman that he was, whenever his girlfriend offered to come his way on the bus, he would decline. It seemed that she had picked up on his discomfort, but was also further infatuated with him, seeing his gallantry on each date night. The bus pulled away in a cloud of exhaust, it stinging the eyes of Paul as he walked toward home. He entered and sat on the couch, falling asleep upon turning on the television. He awoke several hours later, looking at his watch and cursing. If he didn't leave for the bus right now, he would have to wait another 30 minutes for the next one, leaving his girlfriend to wait for him. He ran through his routine, shaving while he showered, brushing his teeth while he shaved, and gargling mouthwash as he brushed. He finished in record time and got dressed, running out the door only to see the bus pulling away. He knew it was fruitless to chase after it, a thing learned from bitter experience. He sat down heavily on the bench covered in graffiti and waited. Sometimes those damn buses would show up early, and he couldn't afford to wait for the next one in the comfort of his home. 20 minutes passed, and there was still no sign of the bus. He pulled out his phone to text his girlfriend, letting her know that he'd be late. He would explain everything when they saw each other, he said, and was met with the reply, "No problem. See you soon, babe. Smiley face." That made him relax a little bit, but he still felt pretty bad for making her wait like this. 10 minutes later, still no bus. Not early this time, but late. This is just perfect, thought Paul. As he finished that thought, the bus pulled up in front of him. He glared at the driver as he showed his pass, but the driver obviously didn't care. There was only one empty seat remaining on the bus, and Paul sat in it, an unpleasant odor filling his nostrils as he noticed he was sitting beside the same homeless man. It can't be him, though. The one from earlier was much older and much more derelict. The homeless man gave Paul a fleeting glance, with an unreadable expression on his face, but then leaned into the window and proceeded to fall asleep.
End of the line.
Paul snapped back to reality, being lost in thought as his phone had died halfway through the trip, so he could only think. He rose from his seat, noting with unease that the homeless man had disappeared. That didn't matter. What mattered was the fact that he had now advanced almost 20 blocks past his usual stop, and he couldn't even let his girlfriend know what happened. Leaving the bus, he trudged along, deflated from the long day combined with the knowledge of what lay ahead of him. Spotting a flower stand on the opposite side of the street, he decided to cross and get some flowers, hopefully to apologize for his earlier screw-ups. The man running the flower stand said nothing to Paul, just shooting him a small smile. Paul found the perfect flowers and went to pay, and that was when he realized he forgot his wallet. Paul looked down, thinking of what he would do now, when the man spoke to him.
Got your wallet, eh? Tough break, pal. Tell you what, though. I'll comp you these ones today, and you just pay me back when you can.
Paul's eyes lit up and he thanked the man profusely. The man gave a nod as Paul started down the street again, jogging with a renewed energy. He made sure to remember where the flower stand was so he could go back after work the next day and pay the man. As he neared where he and his girlfriend usually met, he slowed and his heart sank. There was nobody there, at least no one that he could see. He sat on a park bench and let sadness overtake him, putting his head in his hands and closing his eyes. He awoke to someone tapping on his shoulder. He didn't look up. The tapping was now accompanied by a voice. "Hey, you okay?" Paul raised his head, ready to put a face to the voice, but paused, noticing a figure across the street standing motionless. "Paul, is that you?" He turned his head to the right so fast you could hear his neck creak. He saw it was his girlfriend. "Sorry that I wasn't waiting for you. I tried calling, and then it started to go to voicemail, so I figured your phone died. Then my roommate called and I had to go back and help her with something and... Paul stopped her with a kiss, followed by a smile. No worries. You wouldn't believe what's happened to me today. The couple walked down the street, talking back and forth, holding hands. Paul sat on a bus bench, waiting for the last bus of the night to take him home. The date had gone better than expected. It was now dark, and the lone streetlight cast a depressing orange glow over the landscape. Paul cracked his neck, somewhat relieving the earlier tension that had been building in it. He looked across the street, and saw the same figure standing there from earlier. The figure did move this time, adjusting its hat and shifting slightly. Paul strained his eyes to make out any further details, but it was just too dark and the figure was just too far away. He leaned back and continued to wait for the bus. Closing his eyes for a moment, a chill ran down his spine, making him feel as if he were being watched. He snapped his eyes open and saw the figure from across the way was standing right in front of him. Paul blinked in surprise, and when he looked again, the only trace of anyone being there was a whiff of an unknown odor. Paul waited another 20 minutes before he saw the figure again, or, at least, thought he saw the figure again. It appeared in his peripheral sight, but when he turned his head to look better, the figure was gone, but in its place was the foul and unpleasant stink of BO and liquor. Great, there must be another homeless man that's come to torment me, thought Paul, and that was when he turned around. The figure was standing directly behind him, looking like a combination of the two homeless men and the guy who ran the flower stand. He was clad in a nice suit. He smiled, and when he spoke, the words that came out wound their way through his brain, feeling as though they were tendrils, squeezing tighter and tighter until... Paul awoke, finding himself standing in a long line of people. He looked around in confusion, not knowing where he was until a familiar face walked up to him. It was the guy who ran the flower stand.
Hey, sorry to bring you here, but I do need to be paid. Don't worry, this won't take up too much of your time, and when we're done, I'll send you back.
Where am I? Asked Paul. The man didn't answer him, just turned and walked to the front of the line. Hours passed, and finally, Paul was standing at the front of the line.
Next!
Called an unseen voice. Paul advanced and entered a door, only to see flower stand guy sitting behind a desk.
Yeah, take a load off.
Paul sat down and glanced around the room. The walls were bare, save for a few cracks in the plaster.
You know, it's kind of funny. I gave you those flowers to give to your girlfriend, and now she'll have something nice to put in your grave.
Flower stand chuckled slightly. Paul's mouth hung open.
Come on, you must have known that price needs to be paid.
Paul didn't even breathe, and eventually began to turn blue.
Still, your shock is really doing me a favor here, Paul. Now I just get to relax and watch you die. Hell, I saw your girlfriend. Sheesh, a knockout. Maybe I'll go there after, now that she's single.
Paul lay in the chair, dead.
After all, the devil always collects.